just go into groups and then we come back. Like, it's actually not slowing us down. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't be able to reach that kind of an audience without it.
No, it's gonna transform the program for sure. Yeah. So yeah, I got a group on the go right now.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I think we're good to start. Looks like we have pretty much everyone. All right. So good afternoon, everyone. And thank you all for joining us. I hope you've been having a very productive and exciting day so far. It's only going to get better from here on. So I would like to start briefing a little bit about what this panel is and how is it going to be. So this panel focuses on how local women leaders in the tech industry have created their own opportunities to get where they are today. We will also learn how they got started in their career, some challenges they've faced, success they have achieved, and the advice that they have for women looking to grow their career in the tech industry. Adding to this special event, we have three amazing and talented ladies with us. We have Cathy Simpson, the Chief Executive Officer of TechImpact, and we have Kathryn, the Chief Operational Officer of Beauceron Security, and we have Dahlia Das. Did I say that right?
Oh, yeah. But that was
Dahlia, I'm sorry. Dahlia Das, the IT Project Manager in JD Irving Limited. Thanks once again, ladies, for joining us and making this event even more special. All right, so why don't we start with a short introduction of our panelists. I'm just going in the order as it appears on my screen. So on my screen first, Cathy. Few words about you.
Yeah, I'm the oldest in the panel, that's for sure. That doesn't happen all the time, but it's certainly the case here today. That's just fine. I've been working in the tech sector for 31 years. I moved to New Brunswick. I thought I'd stay 2 years and then head back to Nova Scotia, and it's been 31 years. And everything that I've done is focused on how do we grow more businesses using technology for good, obviously. How do we create more jobs in our economy? How do we transition our economy? How do we get more access to capital? And the way that I do that, I'm the CEO of TechImpact. We're a private sector organization, membership-based for Atlantic Canada, focused on how do we get more businesses using technology and how do we grow the sector. We have about 200 tech companies in New Brunswick. No one knows that number, but we have about 200 companies and it varies all the time. The other thing I do is I'm the board chair of an organization called the New Brunswick Innovation Foundation, or NBIF. And we're an independent organization that focuses on giving funds to tech companies that are starting out, and we do some follow-on investing as well. And we invest in researchers at the college and at the university level. So we love to get that funding from the government, and then we're an independent group that does all of the work to do that. So I'm the board chair of that. And finally, I have my own company. So I'm my own founder, and it's a company that's focused on how do we get more women and girls into STEM entrepreneurship and leadership. And it's a lot to do with building skills so that they think about it. I don't do coding in this class. I talk about what is it that is going to help them feel like this is the right path for them and grow their confidence and skills to be able to explore it. So that's what I do on a daily basis. I'll hand it over to maybe Kathryn.
Oh, thank you so much, Cathy. Yeah, Kathryn.
Awesome, thank you.
Tell us about you.
Yeah, so my name is Kathryn Cameron. I have the pleasure of working with a company called Beauceron Security, and we're focused, it's a software platform focused on the human side of cybersecurity. So how do you get people aware of their role, but more importantly, how do you get them to care about what their role is in cybersecurity? I've been with the company for about 4 years now, and I've seen us go from 2 full-time employees, now at 27, and hopefully 30, 35, maybe even 40 by the middle of this year. So we're doing a lot of hiring. So check out our website if you're interested. And I think in my tenure with the organization, I've had the opportunity to, I started as the business development officer and have taken on and really worked in almost every part of the business aside from the development. I'm non-technical, but on the business side, I've had the exposure into sales, marketing, customer success, raising money, and now in internal company management. And I've had to wear lots of different hats throughout my time there.
Wow, that's amazing. Thanks, Kathryn. Dahlia, please tell us something about yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dahlia Das. I'm from Kolkata in India. That's where I was born and grew up. And I've been in New Brunswick roughly 10 years, on and off. I say on and off because I moved here twice from Calcutta. Throughout my career, I've sort of oscillated between St. John and Calcutta. I know that's not common, but I started out there in my hometown as a software engineer, as a developer, actually, hands-on coding, building things. And I really enjoyed building pieces of code that could actually work, and I could see it work. There's a thrill that comes out of seeing something you've built actually do produce the results you intended. So from there on, I started to get involved in the businesses I was working for and try to understand more of how they operated. That got me interested in doing my MBA and learning more about the business side of things, so that I came to St. John to do that. Following that, I got a job here in Deloitte as a business analyst. Moved back to Calcutta, also worked as a business analyst there. And then I got a job here in JD Irving again in St. John, which is why I moved back. I've been with the company roughly 7.5 years now, and started out as a business analyst and really trying to connect the technical people to the business requirements, make sure that we were fulfilling the needs that were intended from the software we were building. From then on, I had interest in managing projects, so I took up small, medium projects, managed them on my own at first. And multiple projects happening simultaneously took me a lot of multitasking. And then from there on, I was promoted to the role of project manager, which I do today.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much, Dahlia. All right, so let's get into the questions real quick. So my first question, I think a part of your introduction kind of covered it, but I want to be very, I want to know more about how you guys started in tech sector, and what are the challenges or what are the blocks that you have faced from the time you started in your tech sector and to the time where you are right now. So tell us a few words about where it started and where is it now, and how the journey has been. Starting with you, Cathy.
Well, when I started, we didn't call it the tech sector, and I'm not kidding.
Really? Wow. Tell us more.
Well, I started for the phone company, and it was called the communication sector. You worked, and then it got cool, and it was called ICT. And I mean, people use ICT quite a bit now, but if you were part of the cool gang, you worked for a telephone company. Because I started in 1990. I mean, there's probably people on this webinar who weren't even born in 1990, but at that point in time, the phone company here in New Brunswick was incredibly innovative, and it was just had a viewpoint of, it doesn't matter that New Brunswick is small, we are going to have this incredible broadband infrastructure that gets built so that it is going to enable everything that we can do today, from using our phones to, Netflix and everything else. So I started in the internal audit department, and that was awful. But they had a management trainee program, and it was my way to get in. And my dad worked for the phone company for 35 years, an overseas phone company. And so I thought that was kind of cool. But the last thing about how I got started was I eventually got into product management. And that's when I started to understand, oh, all of this stuff are products, and they're software products, and they're services, and they get built on a network, and you need an IT team to build them. but you need marketing people to think about what is the value proposition? How am I going to sell it? How much am I going to sell it for? So I spent a long time in product management and then running product management teams. And that's when I went, oh man, this is cool. This is more than just working at the phone company, which was totally cool the whole time I was there. But that's when I really started to understand the power of technology and what could you do with it. And then I spent 15 years there. And then I actually went to a data consulting and management consulting company called T4G Limited, and ended up being a vice president there for a number of years. And that's when I got into doing the consulting work myself and leading technical teams. But it all really started because of learning what product management was all about.
Wow, interesting. That's an interesting journey. Kathryn, how did you start your career in technology?
Well, it's interesting. I went to school at Mount Allison University, and when I started, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was going to school. I figured, okay, I'll figure it out while I'm at university. And I say by accident, but it really was by accident. I took a course on entrepreneurship, and I thought, great, should just learn some theory, no big deal. And in that class, we actually had to start our own business and create a company. You had to get money, you had to build a business plan, you had to create a product that you were going to sell people. And that was just such an amazing process. I got really, really involved in understanding, okay, we've got a product, we sold clothes, because anyone who's lived in Sackville knows there's like the thrift store to buy clothing and that's it. So there was a huge opportunity, and it was just such a fun experience. So I knew, okay, I want to get into a small organization. And so I joined a program called Venture for Canada, which was about kind of connecting recent graduates with startup companies. And through that process, I started working for a tech company out of Halifax, which was fantastic. I learned a lot about, they had about 50, 60 employees when I joined, and I was really focusing in on HR while I was there. I was like, man, this is like really interesting. I can kind of see how all of the different teams are working together. And in HR, you kind of get to touch a lot of different teams. And I thought, this is a little bit bigger than I want. I want to find something really early. And I met my CEO, David Shipley. We met for coffee, and he was like, oh, I'm starting this new company. And I was like, oh, tell me more about it. And he talked about how it was in cybersecurity. And at this point, I was like, I have an HR background. Like, I've done a lot of business stuff, but what could I bring to a cybersecurity company? He was like, whoa, it's all about the people. Like, you need to have people understand how to use technology. And so that became this like complete shift in my mindset of, you need, the company takes so many different perspectives to bring it to fruition. And so I'm not sure if I convinced him to bring me on or if he convinced me to join the team, but I joined the group. At that point, they were just closing their first funding round. They had, David was the only person working full time when I joined. The other founders were still kind of working nights and weekends and still running their full-time jobs. So it was pretty exciting. I have learned a lot about all things product development management, pieces I didn't really spend a lot of time on in school. So it's a lot of learning, trial by error, and learning as we were going.
That's interesting. Seems you have got a lot of feathers on your cap. Dahlia, tell us how you got started in tech industry, and how has it been so far?
Back in India, where I started in Calcutta, it's very competitive. So even to get into school to learn about technology, I did my undergrad in computer science. You have to take a test. Apart from your high school diploma, you have to take a separate joint entrance test, which is very competitive. So you have to sort of get the right grades to get into to your undergrad, which I managed to do. And then course, it's sort of a pipeline from there. You go through that, and then you're hired in a software company. This is very common, and a large number of people are hired. So you really have to kind of stand out to be noticed, which applies to both men and women in technology back home. And there is sort of a general path that happens there. And you start out with coding, and I did the same. I started out with coding, and after some time, after about a couple of years, I was leading a small technology team of testers. We used to test out code, and I remember back then it used to be really informal, and my fellow developers would come to me and ask me to sort of give them confidence about a piece of code that they'd written, and really they had confidence in my testing ability, so they wanted me to double check everything before they let it out, and that created this human connection. So even back in those early days, I did discover that even though this is about creating and implementing technology, it really is that we're working with. It is about the human connection, and that overrides everything, that drives everything we do. And that sparked my interest in the human resources side and the business side of things, and I really was able to apply it when I did my MBA. I was able to relate the content we were learning in school to my past experiences in that software company. So that helped me put that into a real perspective, and not just theoretical. And it continued when I joined in my role as a business analyst, and both at Deloitte and an e-learning firm in Kolkata, where I moved shortly after. It's all about fulfilling a human need for something, and we do that using software, using technology that doesn't talk, that doesn't have emotions, but the purpose is to help human beings. And throughout my career, I had the good fortune of having being able to work with people who believed in me and showed me things that I could do that even I had no clue. For example, when I started to manage small projects, I remember the first larger project that was handed to me, and my manager, who till this day is my manager at JD Irving, he said, and I sort of made a scared face and said, well, I hope I can really pull this off. I hope this works, because it was sort of a high stakes project. We had things to lose if it didn't work out well. And he said, I wouldn't be giving this to you if I wasn't sure that you could do it. That gave me some confidence, and I had the pleasure of working with people along the way who gave me this level of confidence. And that's how today I'm a little bit more sure in my career, and I know what I'm doing when I'm managing a larger project, but I still know that I have a long way to go in my career. And this is why these inspiring women like Kathryn and Cathy, I have a lot to learn from them, and women like them.
Wow, that's really inspiring. Thank you so much, Dahlia. All right. My next question to you is some of the barriers you faced during this journey where you started at some point and you have traveled so much, and now all of you hold a very high position. So what are some of the barriers you faced during your journey? Cathy?
Well, yeah. Have there been barriers? Yes. Have there been challenges? Yes. And my first years at MBTEL, they were a phenomenal group of leaders. And if you live in New Brunswick, you know that story. They were so ahead of their time at treating everyone equal and having balanced management teams. All of that was really important. But I would say some of the barriers that I felt was not there, but at various times, whether I was working on different projects, was just not always feeling like I belonged and not feeling like I was included. So I would do silly things like, say the team was going out at night and you're the only woman, you know, I would go to dinner and then it'd be like, there gotta be a reason why I need to go back to the hotel. Just because you just didn't feel like I was part of the gang. So I would tell you, when I think back at it, there were times when I was lonely. And then as I became a vice president at a company that did value women's leadership, you still would be lonely. And I did some really silly things when I think back of it, like trying to fit in more. Like I'd always wear suits, but they would be like navy and with a white blouse and pants instead of like a fuchsia jacket like I have on today, because I would just fit in more because you're with the guys and I didn't want to stand out. So when I think about it, a lot of my barriers were more myself. I allowed myself to be challenged in my own brain and believe that I didn't fit all the time in the group, or I may have doubted myself. And the last thing that I really regret, and I still do it today, that makes me frustrated, is I would, to belong and feel like I fit in and my value was appreciated, I would always be the note taker, because there was something powerful that if you were taking the notes for the meeting, it was like I felt sometimes like I had to have a role in the meeting. Well, my role was I was part of the team and I was supposed to be there for the meeting. But it was like, I've got to do something to show I have more value to add. So it's really been more about my own challenges. And one of the reasons why I started my company Up and Go was to help young girls see these are the mental skills and abilities you need to build. So they're not 40 when they don't give a damn about that stuff, because now I don't have that same perspective anymore. But doubting myself, I would tell you, was by far the biggest challenge and barrier that I had to overcome.
Wow. Whatever you said actually is very, very relatable, because even a couple of days back, I was discussing with one of my managers who's also a woman, saying that sometimes it gets lonely for women especially. This was exactly the conversation we were having. I had to tell her, look, Amy, it is getting lonely sometimes. So I feel a lot of things that you said. It's so true. Kathryn, what are some of the barriers you faced during your journey so far?
I have to completely agree. I think it's always that internal monologue of, would somebody else make a different decision? Do I have all the information? Would someone else be better at this role or in the position? I think there's it's always that internal conversation that you're having, there's that self-doubt, and I think it's been really important for me to have not just cheerleaders, but honest cheerleaders, people who will tell me when I've made a mistake and I trust them to have that honest conversation with me, but will also kind of remind me, hey, here's all the great things that you can do. Here's all the successes you've had. You can do this. You just need to just have a little bit more faith in yourself. I mean, occasionally people have tried to give what they thought was good advice, but was actually not really helpful. You kind of get some people like that, but I definitely agree. The largest barriers, overcoming and managing your own internal confidence with the group.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Dahlia, some of the challenges that you have had in your journey.
For sure.
So far.
I could totally resonate with what Kathy and Kathryn were saying. It is internal, and I feel that the barriers, we often create them ourselves. And for me, I came from this whole technical developer background, and I was very analytical and very detail oriented, which I still am today. And from that perfectionist kind of mentality to being involved in management, where you have to consume a large amount of information and process it and act upon it fairly quickly, and that involves a shift in the mindset as well. And to this date, I find myself struggling with making it good enough versus making it perfect before I can say send out meeting minutes or send out a piece of code. It was always about having it perfect, and I had to get over that and say, all right, this is now good enough to release to the world. And I remember a popular example, and you must have heard this before. If Microsoft were to perfect every piece of software that they were building and release it out to the world, they probably would only have one product or zero products out today. So at some point you have to make sure that it's good enough and then just roll with it. So that was one point I had to learn. I was fortunate to be growing up in an environment where I wasn't so conscious of being the only woman in the room, even though I now realize that was the case in a lot of situations, that I was the only woman in the room. But I was never tuned in to really notice that. And fortunately, nobody really brought it to my notice, or it didn't become a thing. I guess I was fortunate to come from a generation that could just go with it, and that wasn't the case for me. But but I did have to adapt to a completely different cultural environment than what I grew up in. And Sushmitha, if you've worked here in Canada, and you probably know this, it's different from how it is back in India. And the even the communication and the way they communicate here is different. And by they, I mean I do fit in now. I feel a little bit better than I did when I first came here. I remember my first few days, and obviously I might have been doing something wrong, because my coworkers came and said, "Hey, can we help you out with this piece that you're doing here, this project that you're doing here?" And I was like, "No, I don't need any help. I'll come to you if I need help." But now I realize that there's probably something wrong that I was doing. So just to cue into those signals that people use here, and Canadians are so polite. In a meeting, in my first few weeks, I heard somebody really talking way more than they were supposed to talk in that meeting, and derailing the meeting. And somebody else stood up and said, "Oh, let us postpone adding further thoughts on this subject till a later time." So it's basically asking the person to shut up in a very indirect way. So I quickly queued up on the way Canadians communicate in this work culture, and that helped me a lot once I got used to that. So the cultural barrier, once I overcame that was really useful. And the perfectionist attitude. At some point, we have to have a balance between good enough and perfect.
Absolutely. I must second that, because the place that we are from, things are direct and sharp as a knife. They just tell you right on your face. With that, cultural shift was indeed one of the challenges for most women from India. I do relate to that. All right. So my next question for you ladies is, what kind of success did you achieve, and how did you achieve them? Like, maybe if you can specifically talk about one or two major success that you achieved, that you always cherish to this time. So what would that be? Starting with Cathy.
I'm proud of all kinds of things. Being a vice president for a national consulting company and playing different vice president's role, that's really cool. But when I decided it was time to leave that company, because I had done lots of jobs there, I really wanted to take a moment to join TechImpact. And I really wanted this job. And not a lot of people go from the private sector to kind of a membership-based organization. That's probably not what you think. And I left a vice president role to come to this job. But I had a vision for TechImpact, and I had a vision for we're underperforming as a sector in New Brunswick. And I was the chair of the NBIF, and I had seen, by being part of that kind of organization and being on that board, you do have the ability to influence and to understand and to listen and to learn and to get more engaged with funds and capital. And there was something really interesting about that. So when I applied for the CEO job, I basically said, this is the vision. I want to make diversity and inclusion a pillar that we talk about. We need to be doing projects. We need to be working hand in hand with governments and other agencies, and basically said, if you don't have that vision, do not hire me. Like, that would be a massive mistake for both of us. So I just kind of put myself totally out there and said, I really want to do this job, and I think I can help contribute to grow this sector. So I did that. And starting my own company, obviously, I'd want to do that forever. So I'm so happy that I've done that. And I work with high school girls, but I also do some other work too. But how do you achieve success? I think it's the better part of the question. And you do that by, like, you have to work hard, and really hard. And you have to put yourself out there, and you can't sit on the sidelines and think someone's going to take care of you. It just doesn't work that way. And if you're going to achieve success, you have to listen. And when I see people like Dahlia, who's come to New Brunswick, moved back to India, come back again, like, that's success. Like, that's a really brave and courageous act that people remember and think about and it's a sign of your character and what you can tackle and handle. You're not sitting on the sidelines when you make those kinds of decisions in your personal life or your professional life. And that's working hard. So I like to remind people that you can't sit on the sidelines. No one is going to take care of your career and have your successes in mind. You have to put yourself out there, and they don't all work out. And I've failed miserably at things, but it's character building and you're learning every time. But just don't expect someone else to do the work for you.
Put yourself out there and work hard. Love that. Kathryn.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think of what are kind of some of the major parts in my career that kind of were turning points are really important. And one that comes to mind is after I had been with Beauceron for about a year, we started looking at, okay, I'm doing all of the roles of what a COO would traditionally do. Is making the decision and saying, like, actually, you know what, I deserve the title that is associated with all of the work that I'm doing. And I had a lot of people say, don't take the title. You don't want to jump too far. You won't leave yourself anywhere else to grow. And I am really proud of the fact that I didn't listen to that advice, because I know people meant well. And but instead, what I've been able to do is have, grow with the role over time as it's evolved, as what the organization has needed. And it is something I'm very proud of, the hard work that I put into the role. With Beauceron in particular, I think one of the things I'm most proud about, and one of the pieces that I was really kind of focused on in recruiting and building the team, was how do you create a values-based organization. A lot of companies talk about, we hire for culture fit. What does culture fit mean? Like that to me never really meant anything other than, somebody you might get along with. Well, that's great, but do you have the same core values? Are you fundamentally aligned with what we're trying to achieve? And I think I look at the team that we've been building, and we're still growing and all of that good stuff. And we're still just such a young company, only 4 years, really 4 and a bit years old. The environment that we've been able to create, because, we're looking for people who share our core values and are well aligned. So, the expectations are very clear from the front. How are people going to treat you, and what are the expectations of you to deliver to others? And that's been, I think, one of my favorite things about the role that I've been able to have with Beauceron. And in achieving it, I will say from the very get-go, my team has been amazing. I've been really, really fortunate to work with some people who have given me way more free rein than I think most people would. So they've kind of let me steer forward. Different opportunities and different things I felt passionate about, and values was one of them. Leading that, defining what that looked like, creating that process, and then creating our entire performance management around it was, something that I was really passionate about doing. And I think we're still improving and iterating always, but it's come a long way.
I really like how you said building the team or building the network based on core value rather than cultural fit. That's a very nice way of putting it. Thank you so much, Kathryn. Dahlia, tell us some of the success that you have had in your journey.
Some of the successes in my journey involve taking a few risks and grabbing some opportunities that I would have regretted passing up later in life. And I'll give you an example. When I was here in UNB St. John doing my MBA, and that was my first experience in Canada. I was brand new to Canada. I knew not a single person in the entire country. when I was moving here alone at the age of 24, which was not common. It certainly wasn't common for me. I'd lived a fairly sheltered life all my life, and I was a really shy kid. I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. I had a select group of close friends, and I would speak to them. And I was a fairly shy kid, wouldn't really put up my hand in class. And from then on, I realized that, okay, I have to do something a little bit differently, because I really have to let out the person I really am and express myself better and grab opportunities as they pass by. So there was this was a very intensive program during the MBA, and anybody who's done it knows that it's full of assignments and chock block. Your schedule is just filled with assignments, tests, group work, presentations, and whatnot. And in the middle of all this came this opportunity. Deloitte at the time was doing a case study competition, and we were informed the same week that it would be on Friday evening, and we had to present an analysis and a presentation about a case study that involved a real business scenario from a real New Brunswick company that they were dealing with. This came across to me as really interesting, but then my first cautious impulse was to say, oh my goodness, I have so much to do this week, so many assignments and exams coming up. Do I really have the time? But then fortunately, 3 or 4 of us got together and said, you know what, this is now or never. If this opportunity, and if nothing else, we'll have fun doing this. Let's give it a shot. So on Thursday night, we pulled an all-nighter. I remember we did we ran around an actual mall taking pictures of where products were stored in different grocery stores, and because this was about product placement and marketing. We ran around taking pictures, assembling them into a presentation, stayed up the whole night and the whole day. And during the day, the next afternoon was the presentation. We did our best. We thought we did pretty well. And then it was over, and we didn't hear anything for the next couple of weeks or so. And then all of a sudden one morning, we had an email from Deloitte saying, oh, all 4 of you are invited to participate in internships for your summer co-op because of your performance at that case study. We didn't have a lot of expectations from it at the point, but we were really glad that we took out some time from our crazy schedule to go after that opportunity and put in our best that we possibly could at the time. We know it could have been better, but we just did whatever we could at the time, and it did work out. Similarly, when I moved back to India a second time, so I was back home. This is after marriage. I was living with my in-laws back in Calcutta, India, and I got this job from JD Irving. They didn't know that I was back home. They thought I was still around here somewhere, and they said, "Why don't you apply?" And I did apply. I was interviewed over video conference a fair number of times. I think we had 5 rounds of interview over video conference, and then I got the job. And it's not common, and I don't know if it is now, but back then it wasn't that common for a new bride to leave the house alone and go off into a different country to pursue her career opportunities. But my husband convinced his parents that this was the right thing to do, that I had already moved back once for marriage and to spend time with them, and that this was the right thing to do, and I should go after this opportunity. So I came all over again alone to St. John. He was busy at the time there, and my father-in-law had some medical issues, so my husband didn't want to move right away. He said, it's okay. You already know your way around St. John. You know a few people there now versus the first time when you knew nobody. So go, you'll be fine. And so that confidence that my family gave to me was the second thing that helped me just come here and start my life all over again in Canada. I was fortunate to be joined by him much later in my career and in my life, but now we're here, and it's easier now from those first few days. But I'm glad I took the plunge and took those risks and had a fair amount of confidence in myself, because without that, I would have been pretty overwhelmed.
Wow. Never hesitate to take risk and grab the opportunities. That's very inspiring. Thank you so much, Dahlia. All right. My next question that I want to ask you all is, are there any situation in your career where you had to create your own opportunity to move forward in your career? You know, where the opportunities didn't come your way, but you created your own opportunity in your work or in your business. Starting with Cathy.
All the time. You know, all the time. And I just don't, I think there's not one answer. I'm sure all of our answers will be different, but, you know, if you work in a large organization, you can apply for jobs that get posted and such. But I would say once you make that mental decision that you are going to be the leader of your own career, you start to approach looking for opportunities differently. So for me, one of those times was wanting to work at TechImpact. Another time for me that really stands out because it really did change my life. I took a women's leadership course, and it's not like how to be more effective in the boardroom or how to, you know, run a meeting or be a board chair, not that kind of a leadership course. It was really about personal leadership. And it was with 25 other women in New Brunswick over 6 months. And we got together, you know, 3 or 4 times. And I had this eureka moment where I went, where have these people been all my life? No one was in the tech industry, but it was all women. And I had spent so much of my career working with men that I went, oh my God, I have been missing this for like 20 years, not just like last month. It was a long time. So I really sat down during that course and made a decision that I was going to decide where I was going to spend my time. And I'm not hesitant to say I'm 52. I've got probably 8 to 10 more years where I'm going to be working full time. So I want to be working on things that matter to me. And that course really made me realize that I wanted to be spending time working with more women and girls so that they can see the opportunities. And I went and did a girls leadership course down at Stanford. I saw some things with an organization out of the US. It was down at Stanford. I came back. I reached out to one of the high schools and said, I want to do a course. Would you let me do it? I'll do it for free. I just want like 10 girls. You sit in on it with me. And I just made that decision. And it was because I had just invested time in myself to do this leadership program. And I really, ever since, I don't expect someone else to create the opportunity, whether it's me as the CEO of TechImpact putting a proposal into the provincial government about leading a project or something with a COA or, you know, seeing something else. I just have made that decision at my age and part of my career that I'm going to create the opportunities for myself and not rely on someone else doing that. But more importantly, I'm trying now to create more opportunities for more women and girls. And that's really where I get excited and I'm passionate by doing that. And it's because I prioritized me about 5 years ago.
Wow, amazing. Thanks, Kathy. Kathryn.
Well, I guess for me, creating your own opportunity is about finding the problems and the areas that you want to solve and where you want to spend your time. And you know, similar to what Cathy just said, but for me, my experience has been much more limited within one organization in particular. And it's always about, okay, I want to spend more time in this. I think this is an interesting problem we don't have anybody working on yet. Here's what I've learned, here's what I'm going to do, and here's my proposal for how I could fix this problem. And doing all of that legwork before, instead of just saying, hey, boss, I think there's a problem over there, you should probably fix it. It's about taking ownership for all of those problems and all of those things and finding ways that you can challenge yourself and, intellectually challenge yourself. I think that to me is, there's so many opportunities in a young company. There's lots and lots of problems to solve, no shortage of those. So it's about finding which ones are the most interesting and then, you know, going to have the biggest impact for people around you. So I think creating your own opportunity, I'll echo a little bit what Cathy just said. Absolutely, you've got to be responsible for your own career path. Your manager is there to help get you there, but you have to also have a pretty big ownership in what direction you want to go into. You can't expect them to just make those decisions for you and then push you along. It's got to be an active two-way conversation.
Wow, absolutely. Dahlia,
Yes.
some of your experiences where you created your own opportunities.
Creating my own opportunity has often involved taking something and putting myself to it like there's no tomorrow, putting in my best effort, putting in as much time as I possibly can. And I've done this a few times in my life. For example, when I came here to study, I took to it like I put in my entire energy and not just to studying, but to really to adapting to life here as well. So there was things outside the classroom, of course, that we did. And I threw myself into it so hard that I ended up doing really well in class. I was able to get the best grades in the class at the time. And even when I was doing my internship at Deloitte, the one that I got through the case study competition, I put myself into it and I really tried to understand the way that they operate and they do business and how they help their business clients, to the point where I was offered a job right away after graduation. And I was one of the very few people in my class to get a job before they even graduated. So that has helped me time and time again, putting my best efforts into something and then just letting things roll as they happen, as they play out. And I found that, again, you have to create your opportunities and raise your hand for something that interests you along the way. When you're putting your best effort, I feel that it does get noticed without you having to do a lot of shouting. I was fortunate to never really have to ask for a promotion. I just focused on the work that I was doing, and I pointed out the opportunities that I was interested in. I told my manager one day I was doing a business analyst role, and I was doing fairly well at it. And I said, you know what, I would like to manage projects. I think I can do this. I've seen how project managers here operate. I've seen things that have worked really well and things that could be improved. I think I could do this. And he said, okay, you know what? Go get your PMP, because in our organization we have a requirement that project managers need to have their PMP. I had about a couple of months of time, so again I had to dive in, throw myself into those preparations. I did not have much time at the time. There was no center here where you could take the exam. You had to go to Halifax. But then I was already going to Calcutta for a visit home. So I remember scheduling my test on the second day after I reached home. I did that because I didn't want to spend a lot of my vacation at home studying. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to finish this exam the day after I reach home. I scheduled it in my hometown in Calcutta. So I'm flying there from here. It's via I remember it was Montreal to Doha and Doha to Calcutta. There was a flight, and I had my PMP book in my hands the whole time. I was running through a short layover in the Qatar airport with my PMP book in hand. People thought I was a maniac. It was crazy. And I studied all through the flight and all through the airport layovers, and I just did the exam, got it over with, and I enjoyed the rest of my vacation. So things have often happened at short notice, and I've had to put in a lot of effort at the time. But then again, it's all about not doing something that you'll regret later on. So I'm glad I raised my hand, asked for the role, put in my best effort, and then let everything just play out.
Wow. I can imagine how hard it could have been, because I know the jet lag and all. It could have
It's a
been
little bit
tough.
crazy. I
That's
don't know if
very
I'd do that again, but it was fun.
Wow. I'm going to pause here for a bit. Let's give some time to the attendees if they have any questions for the panelists. People who are in this panel, you have a Q&A option. If you click on it, you can paste your questions, or you can type in your questions, and our panelists would be happy to answer those. So, attendees, I request you to raise your questions in the Q&A session if you have any, or I'll continue to ask them. Okay. I'll continue with my questions then. Meanwhile, those who are in this panel, if you still want to ask questions, keep your questions posted in the Q&A section. My next question is, it's very common for women to have the imposter syndrome. So have you ever had that in your career? And if you did, how did you overcome that?
So, of course, who doesn't? I think men have it. They won't admit it the way that women talk about this subject, but I do believe they have it too. But when that happens for me, I take a minute to just acknowledge those thoughts and feelings that I'm having at the moment and just say, I'm not feeling good. I don't know if I belong here. Why did they pick me? I just acknowledge it and say, okay, now I've acknowledged it, get the hell out. Like, I don't have space for those thoughts to stay. I belong in this room. I was invited on this group for a reason. You have to move past it. So in the past, I would have said things like, fake it till you make it. Or, if someone opened the door for you, close it as fast as you can because they might want you to get out. And like, that's crazy. I don't believe in those thought processes anymore. You want to be in rooms where you can be your authentic self. And so now I take a minute to acknowledge it, but then I just step back and go, I belong in that room. I've been working in this sector for 31 years. I know how to deliver big projects. I was a program manager. I led architects and project I belong here. And it took me well into my 40s to really figure that out for myself and think about the power that you have because of your knowledge. And I look at it like this. My last comment is, if I was an Olympic rower, I probably have spent years and years and years on the water and working on my skill and my form and all of that. The thing that we forget about is, if we're going to be high performing individuals, our mental skills are as important as our physical skills to be a rower and our emotional skills. And so that's why I'll acknowledge I'm having that feeling, but I've worked on my mental skills to get past that and know, how do I put that in a box and move on from it. It's a big part of what helped me in my 40s to really kind of come into the roles that I've wanted to have in my career.
Wow, that's amazing. Kathryn, how do you deal with whenever you have imposter syndrome?
I think for me, it's always about, as Cathy said, recognizing the thought, but then if I'm feeling really uncertain of myself, I usually am my natural personality, I'm very introverted. I like to kind of sit back and listen. And I kind of have to remind myself, hey, you're here to speak. you have to share that feedback with other people. So it's getting used to that and exercising that muscle and practicing, thinking, geez, like, I was just in an hour-long presentation or conversation and I only spoke for like 5 minutes, and this other person, like, you got to be able to put yourself out there. And, imposter syndrome is, especially, I think, when you're working in the tech or the knowledge industry, or it can be very, very difficult to describe like hard qualifications. Like, very rarely are things like black or white, working or not working. There's so many different ways that you can get to, even in building, right? Like, you can build something so many different ways. There's never a right or wrong decision. It's just, you're making the best decision with the information that you have. What is a qualification, right? Like, you kind of have to think about, like, you're in that room for a reason. You're there to make the best decision that you can make with the information that you have. And it is difficult sometimes to reason with yourself. I usually kind of do a gut check. Have I had enough water? How many cups of coffee do I have? Have I eaten food today? That can be a really, like, sometimes it's 2 o'clock and I'm like, man, I'm just in a bad headspace today. I'm like, oh, I haven't eaten food yet. Like I should probably grab a snack. So it's like those little like physical things as well. Taking care of that, I find can really help make sure that, you know, you're able to communicate and get your thoughts across well.
Absolutely. And Dahlia,
Yeah.
how do you deal with
Sure, I'll add my thoughts here
imposters?
real quick. I feel that imposter syndrome is common and it's fairly healthy when we don't let it overcome us. It helped me once I realized that everybody has this. At first, I thought I was alone. That, oh my goodness, am I good enough for this thing that I'm about to do? And it's real, and I was happy to know that everybody else has this as well. As long as we don't let it overcome us, and I feel that it's healthy for the reason that it keeps us grounded. It keeps me sane. I feel like I always have so much more to learn, and I feel like this is what puts us on the path to further development. If we all sat and thought that we were, oh my goodness, great at what we do, that wouldn't leave us a lot of room for improvement. I feel like because we have this, it keeps us set on the path to improve our knowledge, our skills further, and think more about the people around us, think about how we might help them, how we might solve problems better. I feel that it really puts us on the path to more success, believe it or not. So imposter syndrome, I welcome it to the level that it doesn't overwhelm us. And I feel today that I'm still getting started, and even midway in my career, or I don't know where I am, I feel like I have a lot to learn and so much more to learn and so far to go.
Wow, amazing. We are almost time here, so I would want to quickly wrap this up by saying that it's been so inspiring and so energizing to have all three of you in this panel. Because I already feel like I've had 3 cups of coffee. That's how inspiring and energizing all the stories of yours were. Thank you once again, Cathy, Kathryn, and Dahlia for joining us. And before I let you guys go, I just want to ask one final question. If the attendees want to reach out to you, what is the best way to reach out to you? If you can just quickly let us
Yeah, LinkedIn is definitely the easiest way to reach out and be connected, and I'm happy to connect with you there. And I just wanted to say one thing. I think women get asked about imposter syndrome more than we should be asked about it. And I think it pops up all the time because there's such a focus on more diversity and inclusion with women and visible minorities and everything else. Don't let it get in your head. Like, it's just not right. If you're not going to get promoted, if you're not the right person for that job, like, businesses aren't that crazy when they're thinking about their business performance. But so just make sure you check that. I think it's just so damaging. You're not a female founder. You're not a female CEO. You're not a female architect. You're just a CEO. You're just an architect. You are a founder. And so just don't let some of those things that you read so much about play with your head. And thank you very much for having all of us as part of the panel.
That's very beautiful, and that's absolutely right. That's a very nice way of putting it. Thank you so much,
Yeah, my
Kathy.
pleasure.
Yes, LinkedIn as well, and include a message as to that you're on the panel so that I get the context. But I completely agree. I always struggle with talking about what it's like to be a woman in tech. I think it's more so what it's like to just be a business person in tech. It's like we all face challenges, men and women. Looking at it from our lens is really interesting. But I think even today, all three of us have very different experiences in our career paths have all been very different, and it's awesome to just hear from Dahlia and Cathy both what your career paths have looked like. And I think the stories today have been my favorite part. So thank you guys for sharing, and thank you Sush for organizing and moderating. This was awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, Sush, this was amazing. Thank you so much. And I felt like I learned a lot from my fellow attendees and from you. And the best way to reach me is also LinkedIn. And again, please mention that you were on the panel so I know what you've heard and what context you're coming from. I just want to thank you again for having us.
All right. Thanks once again, everyone, for joining us in this panel, and I hope you have an amazing day. All right. Bye.
Thanks.